A very good morning to everybody watching this video. Today's video is about the problems with having a universal language. If you were going to have a universal language, there's two different options that you would really have. The first one is either that you create an entirely new language, and the second one is that you use a language that already exists. So there's multiple different problems that arise with this. For the first option, if you create a new language, the problem is, what does that language sound like? So when we write it, are we talking like, are we using hieroglyphs? Are we using kanji? Are we using the, Latin Roman letters? You also have to consider what the word order is, if it's going to be a gendered language. So would you say like la book or el book? Or would you just say the book and have it be gender neutral? Or would you not have any kind of articles at all? So if you were going to say in Japanese, the flowers are pretty, you would just say flowers are pretty. You can't say the flowers are pretty. The idea of the word the does not exist. You could say these flowers are pretty, but you can't say the flowers are pretty. So the problem with creating a new language is that each language has its own, individual unique elements. There's literally like thousands of languages. There's no way that you can equally pick and choose from all of them. So there's going to be some kind of bias when you create the language, and that's going to, disproportionately, lean towards some people's languages more than others. If you were to go with the second option, you were to use a language that already exists, the question is, what would that language be? One of the answers that people would probably come up with very commonly would be English. I believe English is now the most spoken language in the world. It's the most common lingua franca. So if, let's say, one person speaks Swedish and then the other person speaks French, and, they don't speak each other's language, but both of them speak English, now both of them can speak with English, right? But the question is, how did English come to be that way? The interesting thing with English is that the overwhelming majority of English speakers worldwide are not native speakers. English is their second or third language. So you have to ask yourself, how did that come to be? And, you have to consider, could that possibly be the whole colonization thing, right? So we bring people from Africa to America as slaves. Now they don't speak their language anymore. Now they speak English. We acquire a new territory, right? We say, I want Hawaii to be the 50th state. Never mind the fact that it's not even connected to the rest of the United States, or the fact that it's in Polynesia. So this is just some of what, America has done to, different people's languages and the erasure of languages. And that's just America. We're not even the source of the English language. Even England, let's not forget what they've done to, Scotland and Ireland and those people's languages. So I feel like if we made English the universal language, it would simply be the ultimate colonization. So another option that you would say, okay, well, if we don't use English, what other language can we use? So another option you might say is Mandarin. And one of the problems I find with that is that Mandarin is mostly spoken natively by the people in China. It doesn't have as much of a reach, overall, there's not as many people speaking it in, Europe and Africa, so on and so forth. So there's that. But then I also feel like how I was talking about with English, how it's taking over other languages, Mandarin is kind of doing that on a little bit of a smaller scale. From what I've read and, watched the videos, it's starting to take a little bit of erasure over Cantonese, and more people are just learning Mandarin. So that would be one problem, that it would also help, erase other languages. That, as well as a lot of people in the Western world, such as, America, I'm thinking of being American myself, a lot of people would be very reluctant to learn Mandarin. They would say, this is America, you speak English, right? But why can't the other people of the world say that? Why can't the people of Okinawa say, I don't want to speak Japanese, that's not my language? We shouldn't be forcing any country or people to be giving up their language for the greater good of, one more universal language. Then you might say, if you go to another country, what are you supposed to do if you don't speak the language? And to that I say, so what? I don't want to go to Japan and then see signs in Japanese and then under it have it translated in English. Why should you have to cater to me? Like, obviously, how did they do things back in the day? They didn't have Google Translate. You can pick up a book, or you can just go in cold turkey. I have found that a little bit of pointing and gesturing goes a long way. Humans aren't stupid, right? So I work at Dollar Tree where I stock the shelves, right? One time I was just stocking, whatever, and a lot of people looking at me, I guess I just have pretty ambiguous features. A lot of people seem to think that I speak Spanish, but I do not speak Spanish, right? So this guy came up to me and he was saying, whatever he was saying, but I didn't know what he said because he was speaking in Spanish, right? So I had to hit him with the no hablo español. So then once he knew that I didn't speak Spanish, he was like, oh, and then he was just gesturing like this for what he wanted. And I was like, oh, deodorant? And he was like, yeah. So then I showed him right where it was. And obviously you can't do that with all things, more like theoretical things that aren't objects or physical things that would be harder to explain. But I think, humans aren't stupid. Obviously we've done things before. You don't necessarily need to have everything translated out for you. My sister earlier this year went to France for her little study abroad program, and she was ordering something at a bakery, and she was saying, whatever she was saying in French, oui, oui, whatever. And she didn't understand what the person had said at one point. The woman said, do you want to speak in English? After all this time and years my sister spent studying the French language, and, that would be the place to learn, they asked her, do you want to speak in English? And I understand that the lady was just trying to do something nice. She was just trying to help her. But, the question must be asked. If you went to America and you spoke French, what are the chances that the person behind the counter would be able to speak French back to you and say, oh, do you want to say it in French? Nope. Very, very small. Now, maybe if you went to some places such as I hear, Louisiana, wherever it is, they have, French Creole or something like that. But the vast majority of, there's a lot of Americans who only speak English and no other language. And I'm not saying that that is good, but I'm saying, why does everybody have to cater to our English language when we can only speak one language? Language affects how we think about things, and so therefore it affects our reality. When one language takes over, a lot of these other different regional languages are forgotten about. And language is culture and culture is language. So when we lose our language, we lose our culture. And you might say that that is what they want to happen, but I will not comply. And we know what happened during the Tower of Babel, and those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.